Transalp 650 review. Yes, it's taken me a while, but we're finally here. Introduction. I think it was Exeter Rider that first mentioned that the Transalp would be a good bike when I passed in 2021. It had been there in the ether on the list of bikes to consider, but after that conversation I really focused on it and took it a lot more seriously after he recommended it. I needed a bike quick after passing. I had a week before I was going to leave to Scotland on a trip, so after sitting on lots of bikes, the Transalp stood out and it just felt right. Yes, and also without a test ride. Keep in mind that they don't allow new riders to actually do test rides. Well, why the Transalp? I've had this bike for 4 years, as I've got a lot of love for the Transalp, but it's not been a pain-free experience. Let me just go through this with you. If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you're considering a Transalp, perhaps specifically a 650, and you want to know more. So I'm actually going to start by giving you a quick overview of the Transalp range, as they're all very different animals, and sort of take it from there. The 600, the 650 and the 700 are all 52 degree V-twins and fall into one grouping, whilst the 750, whilst carrying the Transalp name, is a very different beast as a parallel twin, or the XL600V, the V being for the V-twin. That was made from 1989 to 1999. This is a very well regarded dual purpose bike, and in its day a game changer. The original concept behind the Transalp was a do-it-all bike, something that you could commute from work from Monday to Friday, and then on the weekends get on the motorway and get that patch of dirt and explore the hills and mountains, or even take part in a rally. At the same time, it was something that you could tour across Europe, and this was where the rally touring concept was created. The 600, also lovingly called an Alp, or as Economical Rides calls it, his tranny, has a 600cc carbureted V-twin engine producing 50 horsepower, except the 1989 and 1990 versions, which produced 55 horsepower just for those 2 years. It was weighed around 175 kilos, but later models were heavier. With a 21 1990 front and an 18 130 rear, earlier models were made in Japan, with a single disc until 97, where they received a 2-disc front upgrade and a rear disc single after 1990, as the pre-91 models had rear drum brakes. It was at this point production moved to Italy to reduce costs, and that's where the second disc was added. The Japanese models are generally considered very well, assuming better production quality than the post-97 Italian made models. Just to note that there's actually a very special 400cc version made, called the XL400V, which is produced for the Japanese domestic market. This is where taxation favoured sub 400cc bikes. But anyway, the reputation for Transalps has always been one of off-road ruggedness, one that can go anywhere and do anything. I'd argue that it was actually the 600 that really made the Transalp name that later models really capitalised on. A Transalp became synonymous with comfort, reliability, go anywhere, and built for this with some off-road credentials. Pedro Mota and so many other people have used Transalps as a bike of choice to go around the world and take on many serious adventures. Yet, the bikes that followed were very different animals. I don't think they were ever as balanced and do everything else as their reputation. The Transalp 650, made between 2000 and 2007. The direction of the 650 really marked a significant change to what came before. New concept touring bike. The 650 actually received a slight bump in power to 52 horsepower, but had more torque, with 54 to 55 Newton meters at 5,500 revs, or 41.5 foot-pounds of torque. However, the shocks were designed for road use. The exhaust system was updated, the fuel capacity was increased to 19 litres, giving about 190 to 200 miles range in my experience, and the weight was said to be 190 kilos but dry, but I think I'd probably estimate somewhere around 215 to maybe 220 kilos fully fed and watered, and the front was kept at 21 1990 and the rear at 17 120 90. The 650 was really a bike that tried to upgrade the 600 In a lot of ways, the 21-inch front wheel tried to maintain those off-road credentials, but it was never in the same league. Its natural domain was definitely on the road, and if you needed to do some off-road, you could, but to get it really capable, you needed to be modded. But basically, there was so many things that you could do. But I think the worst thing was that even on the road, it still left a lot of things to be desired a lot of times. It has actually had me skidding around on the motorway at times, and I've had so many near misses. Well, there's actually this one time with this post event in Scotland. But I think Pooley's been traumatised enough by these damn mine shenanigans, so we're just going to leave it there. But I think it's a really overlooked bike. I'll speak about more of this later. I suppose there is an argument that with the 19-inch front, wider tyres, have it been lowered, some modern amenities like an ABS and fuel injection, it could really have made this bike very, very good on the road. And that's where it was being ridden. And that's exactly what Honda did for the next model, the XL700. It's interesting because there's actually two designations here. There's the XL700 V for the V-twin, and then there's an XL700 VA. So it's the 2011 and the 2012 models. They were the A models. But anyway, the 700 was essentially a totally different animal to anything that had come before. 59 horsepower, 44 foot-pounds of torque, 19-inch front wheels, increased the dry weight to 120 kilos. It added ABS, fuel injection, but interesting, had a smaller tank of 17.5 litres. And I think they said it was about 150 mile range. I think it's probably going to be a bit more than that. But again, I've not owned one, so you can look to reviews from owners. The focus for road riding was even more pronounced, I think, with the suspension travel reduced, the ground clearance was less. I suppose in some ways, this is why the name was a bit of a contradiction with the bike itself. It wasn't really in keeping with the original concept, but yet it was a fantastic bike. It's been very, very popular and still remains to today. What Transalp is or should be, has evolved during its lifetime. That V-twin model is bomb-proof. Looked after and serviced with good quality parts. I'm sure it will outlive me. In the end of the nuclear war, there'll be cockroaches in the Transalp engine, the only things to survive, I think. I think it's common link to say between all three of them is that bomb-proof reliability. I think that's been a bit of an understatement, but I think more on that later on. In short, I'd say the whole Transalp series were not high horsepower or fast machines. They were not off-road demons or high-speed motorway bikes with quick quarter miles and all that. For me, the Transalps were always comfortable bikes. They were good commuters, but could offer a little more. But there came a time when that wasn't enough. And in 2012, Honda let the bikes and the name go. After 11 years, in 2023, the new Transalp 750 came out, still being produced today. And its designation is the XL700. And I think importantly here to note that V's at the end is gone, because it's no longer a V-twin but a parallel twin. So after a decade, Honda relicensed the name Transalp once again, and in the past the V-twin had always been a hallmark of a Transalp, but no, it was gone. But I think there was more to this bike. It was more of a modern take. There was a massive boost in power to 91 horsepower, and that 21-inch front was back, but with an 18 150/70 rear, but it's also 209 kilos. I think a lot has been made about the 750's abilities, but again, I've not ridden it. But Exeter rider who has and absolutely loves it sings its praises no end. However, the hallmark of a Transalp for me was always its bulletproof reliability, that comfort, that ease, that approachableness. And I think it's a bit too early to speak about things about reliability, but it seems to have the other things quite down. And with a 250 mile range from its 16.9 litre tank, it seems to be very capable as an on-road tourer as well. There are many people doing many sorts of crazy things off-road, but I think time will tell. It has to be argued that the new Transalp, upon reflection, is closer to the original ethos, I think, in a lot of ways, than its predecessors have been for over 2 decades.